I'd like you to perform 5 acts of kindness in the next day or two, and notice how you feel when you perform those acts of kindness. And that is part of the happiness formula.
From Acapulco, Mexico, this is Anarchast.
Hey everybody, welcome to Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. I've got a great first-time guest coming on. His name's Anil Gupta. He's the author of the best-selling book, Immediate Happiness. Part of his bio says he's an electrifying catalyst for profound change who is devoting his life to helping people rise out of pain and blockage into overflowing abundance, happiness, and fulfillment. That sort of a thing, which, as you know, if you've been watching Anarchast, that's been a fairly big focus of mine, is a realization that really, in order to help other people, we need to essentially fix ourselves. Fix isn't quite the right word, but really work on ourselves to get over our own problems, our own blockages. And of course, I've had on Johnny Dupre, my hypnotherapist, who's helped me out a lot over the last year. He'll be speaking at NARC Apoco, talking about these issues. And I've really realized that most people, actually pretty much everyone, has some sort of damage, some sort of trauma, some sort of old belief systems that are just running around in their head that don't actually serve them anymore, and that sort of a thing. So Anil's really big into that stuff, and he'll be speaking at NARC Apoco. And I just want to mention, there's a lot of people out there who are kind of wondering what's going on with Anarchapulco, because there's been so many changes and it's growing so much, and we're expecting about 3,000 people next year. And a lot of people were saying, not a lot, but I've seen some people saying things like, well, where's a lot of the speakers from last year? Why aren't they on the main stage? And a big reason is because our movement is really growing, and we're trying to bring in as many people from as many different facets as possible to bring in different angles on things. So along with Anil, we also have a bunch of new speakers, including people like Thaddeus Russell of the Renegade University. Of course, we have Doug Casey coming for the first time, Andrew Napolitano, who's an anarcho-capitalist, a Rothbardian anarchist, he calls himself. We have Jose Merced, who's a Tatameche, who's the town elder of Cherán, Mexico, which is a completely anarchist state that I've recently visited. Of course, we have Ten Mon, the leader of the Libertarian Party of Canada. A lot of returning guests as well, but we also have Joe Quirk, from the Seasteading Institute, so ways to get away from sort of the state and sort of start our own areas. Joel Bowman of International Man, that's Doug Casey's sort of right-hand man. We have Becca Tizgani, who's the author of Venus and Her Lover, who's really into things like Tantra and really connecting to yourself and connecting with your partner and things like that. So all that kind of stuff, but we're going to have over 150 speakers, just so everyone knows. We've only announced about 30 of them so far. So if you're wondering where some of the people are that you were expecting to speak, they'll be announced over the next few days and weeks. So a bit of a long introduction there, Neil. Sorry about that. I don't want to keep you waiting. I know you're sitting there in Orlando, Florida, and it's a pleasure to meet you. First question I have to ask you, though, is how did you become an anarchist?
Really, it wasn't by any sort of planning. I was on the verge of suicide in 2008. I wouldn't eat with a knife just in case I did something stupid. I wouldn't walk on a busy road just in case I had 5 or 10 seconds of madness. And I realized that life was running me and I wasn't running life, and that I had to do something. If I did the wrong thing, I wouldn't be here. But if I did the right thing, I could take charge of my life. And then I realized that I could teach this. I have a gift, and this is something that really drives me to help other people. So it's my adversity drove me to a place that I can free myself and free other people from the pain and suffering that we're all going through. I'm going through some pain myself, and everyone does, but the difference is pain is temporary and suffering is longer term.
Very interesting. My Johnny Dupre has told me a few times that a hero's story never starts out with everything was fine. And what I've sort of discovered in life is that a lot of people who go on to do some fairly great things, or really great things, whatever you want to, on what spectrum you want to put it, have started out with being really kind of demolished, kind of really at the end of the rope sort of a thing. And people who've watched Anarchast know that I was very close to there a few years ago, and I did the same thing as Anil. I just started, well, I don't know exactly what you did, Neil. I'm going to ask you in a second, but I started working on myself, trying to figure out why am I feeling this way? What's going on? I started to realize there was a lot of programming in my head from childhood, from the culture, from television programming, all that sort of stuff, the school system, the government indoctrination camps, and a lot of that stuff was still running around in my head a lot. And really, it's a process of almost kind of like reprogramming yourself is what I've found, and that can really help for, people to kind of get out of these things that are really detrimental to their lives, and they don't even really fully understand why. So, Anil, talk us through what you actually did after 2008 that really helped you out, and what you do now.
Well, firstly, I had to have an intervention from Tony Robbins, his wife's brother, and then my wife. And I told her, look, honey, I've lost everything, or we've lost everything. She said, no, you've made one big mistake. And I thought, oh no, she's going to hold this against me for the rest of my life. She said, no, honey, you haven't lost everything. You still have me, and we still have the kids. We'll sleep in the street if we have to, as long as we're with you. That was a shocker, and I thought that she was going to disown me. And then she said, what do you love to do? And I said, well, I love helping people. And she said, why don't you do that? I said, I can't make a living out of that. She said, look, honey, I've never asked you for any money. Just do what you love. So I started giving. In the moment I gave, all the pain and suffering disappeared, and that was like a big shock. But it has to be authentic. So I started giving. The first event was like 6 people, 10 people, 20 people. Then recently I spoke in front of 10,000 people. But that would never have happened if I hadn't gone through that adversity. So ladies and gentlemen, adversity is your friend. I know that you may be going through some adversity right now. Know that there's someone there to help you, someone there to support you, and that you're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I've learned that lesson so many times now. It's really tough when you're in the moment of really extreme traumatic sort of situations to realize that. But it really truly is the case. Every single thing that's bad that's happened, and you could say, in my life has turned out to be something good in the end, because it made me have to change and get better in various ways. So that's what I've really found, is that almost all of life's issues or problems are actually kind of blessings in disguise, and it's an opportunity for you to rise higher because of it.
It is, and it's not what happens in life, it's who you become in that moment. You have a choice. You take the high road or you don't. And the people who take the high road really have a passion to help other people, and it makes such a difference because they forget about themselves. They disappear, and once you disappear, the ego disappears. And when the ego disappears, you just act as a conduit. All I am is a conduit. All you are is a conduit. All we can do is give our knowledge and support people.
Yeah, when you bring up giving, that might make a lot of people think, should we be giving all our money to charity and that sort of a thing? What I've found is that money is actually not the biggest thing that's most important to give. And I've been doing a lot of this myself recently. I haven't announced a lot of it yet, but definitely going to be helping out a lot of homeless kids here in where I live, older people who have been sort of just abandoned, and street dogs and that sort of thing. We haven't announced it yet, but I'll be announcing that over the next few weeks. And yeah, it's totally true. There's something about when you give in one form or another, it really comes back to you so much more, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you can give your time, your energy, your love, your commitment, your joy, your gift, your money, whichever way you can give, and people will always remember how you made them feel.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big thing that I've actually said on Anarchast in the past, is there's a lot of voluntarists and libertarians and anarchists who really try to just use facts with people. And so they'll meet someone and they'll say, look, here's the facts. It doesn't work. This is a terrible system. There's way better ways to do things. Here's all the facts. But when they're doing it, a lot of times they're like shouting at the person or calling them names or something. And most people, for whatever reason, really are quite emotional reaction. And most people, some people are very logical and rational, and they don't get too emotional. But most people do. And if you leave them feeling like they've been attacked, they're not going to listen to you whatsoever.
Now, the secret is you have to empower people. And as human beings, we do everything for one reason only. And that's for the feeling it gives us. So if you do a talk, you have a meeting, if you create a feeling for them to live into, they'll do anything. They'll be inspired, they'll be moved, they'll be energized. Every part of their soul will be awakened. But if, as you say, if you shout at someone, and kids, we do that with kids, that's not the way. It's treat kids with love and empathy and treat them as adults. Treat them and ask them questions. Ask them, hey, can I take some advice from you? How do you think they're going to feel? They're going to feel respected.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you know much about Anarchapulco, but Dana Martin essentially is running the show on the ground, at least, and she's the leader of the unschooling movement and peaceful parenting and things like that. And we actually have an entire family camp at Anarchapulco running throughout the entire event, where we encourage people to bring their kids. And the whole sort of message of it all is peaceful parenting. Don't, hitting kids is absolutely insane. That is not the way to teach anyone. Treat them as individuals and treat them with respect, and you will find that they will be so much better than what you thought they could be if you just allow them to be individuals. Think of them as individuals. It's kind of crazy when you think back about it, Anil. It was only about 60, 70 years ago that I saw a thing in a newspaper, and the question was, should you hit your wife? And everyone was like, yes, because you have to discipline them and that sort of thing. And then now that's changed, thankfully, although there is still people who do that, but it's not socially quite acceptable at all anymore. But still people will hit their kids. And of all the people to hit, these little tiny brand new human beings who are just wide-eyed and want to learn, and they're going to make mistakes, of course, but to actually go and physically aggress against them is totally not the way. So when you say that, that's totally what our focus is at Anarchapulco, and with Anarchy is peaceful parenting as well.
Yeah, and can I share a beautiful exercise we did with the kids?
Sure.
So we would sit around a dinner table and I would ask my wife, honey, what did you do today that you were not thanked for? So she might say, I cooked this really amazing meal. And then I would thank her, my son would thank her, my daughter would thank her. Then I would ask my son, what did you do today that you weren't thanked for? So he would say something, Dad, I got this great grade and no one acknowledged me. So we would acknowledge him. Then my daughter would say something, then I would say something. Next question is, what are you grateful for? Then we would go around the table. Next question is, what act of kindness did you perform today? We would go around the table. Next question is, what act of kindness did you see today? Go around the table. Next question is, what did you see? What did you notice? So, for example, my son would say something like that. I noticed you picked me up from school. You gave me a hug and a kiss. Not every parent does that, and not every parent comes. And I said to him, son, I will always hug and kiss you. Even if you're 40 or 50 years old, I'll still do that. If anyone says anything to you, this is what you say to them. My dad loves me. That's it. End of story. And then last question is there anything on your mind? And one day my daughter said, Dad, I'm having a problem at school. Now, the great part of this exercise is this. Next day, my wife would lead the meeting. Next day, my son, who was 9 at the time, would lead the meeting. And then next day, my 7-year-old would lead the meeting. So they're expecting these questions. So they become leaders. Their level of awareness goes up. And they become confident. And the communication is at a much deeper level. This one exercise can change the family dynamic.
Absolutely. So many things to make this world a better place are so simple. And it's really just about communication. It's about compassion. It's about empathy, things like that. And, when you mentioned how you treat your children, thinking back to my childhood, basically it's 5 o'clock, get in here, eat your dinner. I know you don't want to eat those vegetables. We're going to force you to eat them. Shut up. It's like, whoa, that's a lot better how you do it. And, so many of us were kind of raised that way. I don't know what it was or what weird things were happening at that time back in the past that so many people were doing things like that. But it really is so simple as little things like that, like what you're doing with your kids. And if everyone were doing things like that, the world would change dramatically overnight. It's really actually quite simple. But people just don't know that they should even they don't know, they've never heard these ideas before for whatever reason. I guess they watch their television programming and they go to the government schools where they don't teach them anything about any of this sort of stuff. So really, it's kind of a little bit up to us to spread this information to let people know, this is a much better way to live. And if you live more like this, everything changes, because you probably know this, Anil, once you start to change, it seems like everything around you starts to change. So if you change and you become better in these respects, and then your kids, by the way you're treating them, they become better in that respect, that will spread throughout entire communities and with the internet, even throughout the entire world.
It does, because when you change, your vibrational energy changes, and when your vibrational energy changes, everyone knows it and feels it, and it's such a powerful force.
Yeah, absolutely. I've recognized that as I've been changing, and it's just amazing how the world just changes when you change. That whole saying, "Be the change you want to see in the world," is so true.
And then when you are the change, people will come to you. Things will come to you. Openings will come to you. Everything gravitates towards you without you having to try. And that just makes it so much easier and so much more peaceful.
Yeah, absolutely. When you try to go and change someone, and I've done this, tried to do this numerous times, try to help them. Yeah.
My wife.
Yeah. When you try to force someone to change, they won't change. In fact, they'll often do the opposite. So you really have to change yourself, and then they'll start to gravitate towards you, and then you can begin to help them.
And what they start thinking is, oh, I like that change in you. I want some of that, which is so much more powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got your book, Immediate Happiness. I haven't read it. I apologize. I've got so many books on my Kindle to go through.
I understand completely.
I am going to add it to my Kindle list, which if I go to the forest and fast for 40 days, as I plan to do at some point in maybe the next year, hopefully I'll get through a lot of my Kindle reading list, and hopefully it'll be one of them. But maybe you can just give a little bit of information about the book. When did you write it? What's it all about? That sort of a thing.
Really, it was written in 2013, and it's a manual on how human beings behave. Because I realized that I was never taught on why we do the things that we do, why we sabotage relationships, why we get frustrated, why we get angry about expectations, even how I call it the dating facade. It's not really a way to live a life if you don't know how you work, because we were given a manual for our car, for our TV, for our house, but we were never given a manual for ourselves. So it's very practical. It's a very easy read. There's no fluff, and it's simple. Just read 1 or 2 chapters, apply them, and you'll see immediate benefits.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you pointed out very well. There's no manual for how to live life, really. It seems to be the one thing that people should have, we don't really seem to have for the most part. I know me personally, I spent 40 years just looking around trying to figure out what's going on. No one told me anything, and that sort of a thing. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing you down at Anarchapulco and talking about these things. I don't know, how old are your children?
My son is 27, my daughter is 25.
Okay, I thought they might be younger. So I was going to say if they were well, you can very welcome to bring them. But for anyone out there, if you've got sort of younger kids, maybe under 15, that sort of age, definitely try to bring them down. There's going to be so many unschooled and peaceful parented kids down here. There's going to be an entire family camp for them. And it's really, I don't know about you, Anil, but have you been around kids who've been raised, with peaceful parenting and that sort of thing? But I have personally, and almost always, they're some of the most amazing kids I've ever met in my life.
It takes me about 30 seconds to realize what their parents have been doing to their kids. Just the way they walk, the way they look at you in your eyes, the way they talk and shake hands. It's very easy to tell. And if you have kids, please, please, please bring them, because one sentence can change their life. One interaction. They see someone doing something that could completely change the rest of their lives. It's totally worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's what I found. My kids will be there. They're 12 and 14 now. Time flies. And but really looking forward to seeing everyone all getting together again down here in February. If you don't know about it, February 14th to 17th in Acapulco. You can check it out at anarchapulco.com. Is there anything, well, there's one thing about you that I've read about, that you do some personal therapy sort of sessions, or what do you call them, personal sessions with people? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Well, really, I call them transformational sessions as opposed to transactional. So I can help remove any blockage within an hour, 2 hours. And I've had the pleasure of working with Mike Tyson and very well-known celebrities. But my gift is to see what the real problem is, unblock it so that you have a freedom. And the biggest problem people have is forgiveness. Forgiveness is the express pathway to freedom. The quality of your life is dependent on the depth and authenticity of the forgiveness you're able to extend to others and to yourself. So forgiveness is a big thing.
Wow, very interesting. Yes, I've heard that, and I've been trying to incorporate that into how I do things more. A lot of these things are quite new to me. 3 years ago, I didn't know anything about anything we've been talking about, and I've been going through it all over the last few years, and I've heard that a lot from various therapists and people I talk to about forgiveness, and I've been trying to do that, and that sort of a thing. And so it's very interesting to hear your perspective that you think it's the express way to happiness. And interesting, you also work with Mike Tyson. That's one interesting character. Do you have any Mike Tyson stories? He's like one of my favorite people in the world because he's like so unique in so many ways, and the fact that his favorite thing in the world is pigeons. It's just like, wow, he's so unique. Any interesting Mike Tyson stories that you can tell us, or?
Well, I've got a video of him speaking to me and giving me a testimonial, and he nearly bit my ear off 3 times. But I asked him a question: what is success to you? And he said, quote, "For a guy like me, Mike Tyson, success is just staying out of prison, keeping away from lawyers and all the fuss like that." And that's true for him. So the definitions that we use for success and love will determine how we feel. So if you have a definition of success, which means hundreds of millions of dollars, it's going to be very painful. But if your definition of success is, say, success is making progress, that's a lot more achievable, and it gives you a lot more joy a lot quicker.
Very interesting, yeah. Unfortunately, he didn't manage to stay out of jail, but I think he was set up on a lot of that stuff. It's very unfortunate. It's unfortunate a lot of the stuff that's happened to him in his life, including his childhood. I know a lot about him. I used to be a huge boxing fan, and I actually met him once, and I actually kind of I feel a bit bad for him, all the stuff he's had to go through, and so many people have really, stolen from him and defrauded him and all that sort of stuff. But he seems to be keeping on. And so hopefully he does well in the future. So Anil, is there anything else you want to add? And if not, let people know about your book, about website, anything else you want to let them know about you.
Oh, okay. My website is immediatehappiness.com. My book is obviously called Immediate Happiness. It's available on Amazon. But I want to give a gift to all your listeners. I'd like you to perform 5 acts of kindness in the next day or 2, and notice how you feel when you perform those acts of kindness. And that is part of the happiness formula. And when I'm on stage at Anarchapulco,
tough to pronounce, I know.
I'll share the rest.
That's great. Yeah, we'll be looking forward to you coming down. There's going to be a lot of transformational sort of experiences going on in Acapulco. You haven't been here before, Anil, but most people I talk to say it changed their lives, and in a good way. They didn't say it changed it in a bad way. So it's one of those sort of things. So really looking forward to this year. We have so many great people like yourself coming down. There's an entire health and wellness for the entire 4 days. Just so people understand, we haven't announced everything yet. There's going to be 5 stages this year. There's going to be close to 200 speakers, and a lot of them are people like Anil who are really helping you to get over certain issues or blockages and make your life better so that you can go and make other people's lives better as well. And I think that's really the key to really what, if we want this world to be better, that's really the key, is fixing yourself or working on yourself and then helping others, as Anil said. And so I'm going to try to do the 5 acts of kindness in the next day or so. I don't leave my house, so I guess I'm going to have to do it with my family most of the time, but I'll do it here, and I'll see how I feel as well. And I hope you do as well. Put your comments down below if you do it, and tell us how you feel. And I'll bet a lot of people say, yeah, it felt pretty good. And I think that's a big part to life is giving and acts of kindness. So real pleasure to have you on. Looking forward to seeing you down here in Acapulco, Mexico, right here in February. And that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.